Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Introduction to the Antihero, brought to you by yours truly, Mr. Santiago. I'd like to do a quick recap of the two archetypes of characters we've explored thus far. So we've got protagonists, such as the stunning Lady Katniss Everdeen, the good guys of your story, and the antagonists, like this guy, the Joker, from Batman. Usually bad news, wants to do something awful and terrible to the good citizens of Gotham City, and they're usually the people you're rooting against. All right, you don't want the antagonists to win. Bad guys. Simple stuff. So all stories follow this this thread called the hero's journey, and I'll use Lord of the Rings as a quick example. So Frodo Baggins, main character of Lord of the Rings series, lives his entire life in Hobbiton and doesn't really know anything about the outside world. And then his uncle leaves him a magic ring that turns out to be like the super most evil ring ever. And he doesn't really know what that entails for him, so he just kind of holds on to it until Gandalf shows up and is like, yeah, you got to get that ring out of here. It's bad news. Like, they're going to come and kill you for it. And he goes, oh, well, I don't want to die, so that's bad. So he crosses this threshold into the unknown. He leaves Hobbiton behind and goes on this huge adventure, making it to Rivendell, where for a brief moment you think, okay, well, you know, he's gotten to Rivendell, and that was the hard part. So, he's going to go home and be fine, right? No. Makes it to Rivendell and winds up having to go on an even larger adventure to destroy the One Ring. And along the way, he meets friends who are helpers, mentors to help him along, faces the temptation of not using the One Ring, because if you use it, you're basically becoming corrupted and evil, which you should not do. Goes through very low moments, such as, the death of one of his mentors, and is ultimately transformed by that, realizes that he kind of has to do this on his own because he doesn't want anybody else to get hurt, and goes through this whole process of bringing the ring to its climactic end at Mount Doom. Takes 3 books to get there, but he does it. He marches all the way across the land and manages to stop the evil Sauron from succeeding in his plan to control all life. And then at the end, he returns to Hobbiton and eventually gets to sail on a ship with the elves and his return from the dead mentor into, what is kind of like a metaphor for heaven, or, essentially finds peace at the very end. So where do anti-heroes fit in with all that? Like, how does that have anything to do with the hero's journey? Well, anti-heroes fit in all over the place, truthfully. They're just all over the place. Thrown in to the story in many different parts. They can be the actual protagonist or the main character, or they can be a supporting character. And an anti-hero, by definition, is a protagonist that lacks conventional heroic standards. Okay, so it's still got that word hero in there, right? Like, the anti-hero is a hero, still, doing the right things, but not for the same reasons that a traditional hero would be doing things. Anti-heroes are not so idealistic. Anti-heroes do things because they want to get something out of it. And you can see that in some of the main characters that I've listed here. If you follow the Punisher in Marvel Comics, Jack Sparrow in Pirates of the Caribbean, or Dominic Toretto in Fast and the Furious, you'll realize that they kind of do things that have a moral gray area. What they're doing isn't super heroic necessarily, but it winds up being the right thing, and you wind up cheering for them and hoping they succeed because you realize that human beings are not so black and white as good and bad. There's lots of gray area in between. And, other times the anti-heroes are just supporting characters that kind of help the protagonist along on their journey and provide support. And in my opinion, they're usually some of the more interesting characters. Like, for instance, Severus Snape, in his natural habitat of reprimanding Harry and Ron. He's one of my favorite characters of all time, and he is, I think, one of the perfect examples of an anti-hero that I could possibly give. So, bear with me. There are some spoilers ahead. I'm sorry, but they're necessary. So I really hope you guys have read Harry Potter. And even if you haven't, don't let the spoilers detract from anything. It's still completely worth the read. It's not about the ending. It's about the journey that gets there. So I think he's the perfect example of a antihero because he's introduced as a typical antagonist. His appearance is kind of evilish, right? He's got a hook nose and greasy hair, which is unappealing. Like, you're not supposed to like this character. He absolutely hates the hero of the story. He hates Harry Potter, right? He's mean to him every time he gets the chance. He ridicules him in class, takes delight in punishing him. But he spends 7 books, hundreds and hundreds of pages, protecting this child because he used to be in love with that child's mother. And I think Rowling's a genius for managing to make him so complex. It takes a long time, right? It's a long payoff of 7 novels before you finally appreciate what an amazing character Severus Snape is. But when you get there, it's totally worth the payoff because you realize he's doing the right thing, but he's doing it for his own reasons. He's not doing it because he is a hero or wants to save the world. He's doing it because the woman he loved was taken away from him. And he thinks that there needs to be, someone needs to answer for that there needs to be a kind of justice. And the only way he's going to get it is by keeping Harry Potter alive and stopping Voldemort. And it adds a layer of depth to an extra layer of depth to these scenes that ordinarily would just be typical, protagonist versus antagonist posturing. Like, I don't have the full version of Screen-O-Matic, so it wouldn't allow me to record audio from my computer. And I don't know if the mic would pick it up anyway, but rather than deal with that whole rigmarole, I'm just going to talk about the scene, which is a famous and very well done both in the book and in the movie, where Harry confronts Snape in the Great Hall near the end of Book 7, and he says, "How dare you stand where he stood?" And that's in reference to the fact that Snape has killed Albus Dumbledore and has taken his place as headmaster of Hogwarts. And Harry is, livid, and he's upset because, to him, how could Snape possibly stand where one of the greatest men of all time has stood? And what you find out is that really Snape didn't want to kill Dumbledore. Dumbledore more or less had a conversation with him prior to his death where he was like, "Listen, you're probably going to have to kill me, and it's totally okay if you do, because, I'm not the end-all be-all of the wizarding world. You need to continue to protect Harry, and there's a greater goal in mind." So Snape does bad things, He does murder, he does betray, he does lie, but he does them because he knows ultimately that that's the only way to keep Harry safe, which is super questionable, but also superhuman and beautiful in a strange kind of way. And I think that's really what the core of all antiheroes are about. They're doing things that we as the reader are kind of perplexed by, or may not like, but at the end we realize, oh my god, this character is so much better off for not being so black and white. The fact that they have this gray area makes them really human. So that's all on my quick introduction to antiheroes, and stay tuned for a quick assignment that will be forthcoming. Thanks for watching, guys.